In this example, I'm working with a photo of a train that I've added a weathered appearance to make it look older. Let's look at the train before the addition of the texture to make it look weathered. This is the original shot, and as you can see, it's up here, particularly in this area, the appearance is much smoother and more consistent. There's some weathering or corrosion going on down here at this tank, but most of the rest of the train looks relatively clean for this type of a vehicle. You look at the metal down here, and it's pretty bright and smooth for the most part. But when we add back in the layer that has the weathering, the texture on it, then it takes on quite a different appearance. This is the texture I've applied to it. Let me turn off the other layers and let me change the blend mode to normal so we can see the texture. And I'll turn the opacity all the way up, and I'll turn off the layer mask so that we can see exactly what's going on. So this is the original photo that I'm using as a texture. This is different than the previous photo in which we were adding noise that was generated by Photoshop. In this case, we're using a photograph to be applied as a texture to another photograph. So let me walk through the entire process of creating this photo. I have another copy of the photo available right here with nothing, just at the starting point. And I'm going to start by bringing in the texture layer. So I'm going to switch over to Bridge, and I've got the texture photo right here, this photo called Trapped. And I'm going to bring this into Photoshop by right-clicking on it and choosing Place in Photoshop. And when you do Place from Bridge, it brings it into the photo that you have open, the image file, whatever image file you currently have open. I'm zooming out just so I can make sure that I've got coverage of my entire image. If the photo of the texture had been smaller than the layer, then I would have had an opportunity to drag it out to cover the entire layer. But I don't need to do that, so I'm just going to press the check mark to commit the change. Now, of course, we don't want to just obliterate the engine. We want to show it through. So I'm going to change to linear dodge blend mode, which is what I was using in my other example. And then I'm going to drag down the opacity. Now, the process of arriving at this particular blend mode and the particular opacity is a process of experimentation. I didn't know in advance that I was going to use this particular blend mode with that particular opacity. What you typically tend to do is you start out by just experimenting with different blend modes. And you might want to start out at 100% opacity, or depending on the effects that you're getting, you might want to dial it back to, say, 50%. I'm going to just walk through a few of them. I've selected the dissolve blend mode, and now that you can see there's a blue outline around the blend mode box. This means that I can use the arrow keys. I'm pressing the down arrow key now to go through these additional blend modes. Let me zoom in so we can have a good look. And these are giving a little bit of a possibility, although some of them are more potentially useful than others. Some of them would clearly need to have the opacity dialed way back. I'm going to continue looking at blend modes. We're looking at the darkening blend modes now, and most of those weren't working, but now we've moved into the lightening blend modes. As you probably know, this group of blend modes all make your photo darker, and these all tend to make it lighter. So I'm in lighten now, and I'm at 50% capacity, and this is looking like it might work. Perhaps if I dial this back, this could definitely work. I just kept moving through them, trying various examples of blend modes and different opacities, and actually several of these have the potential to work. I ended up with the linear dodge blend mode, and I dialed the opacity back to about 30%. But even at that level, it's still too much, and you can clearly tell that there's some kind of an overlay going on here. You can see the consistency from the top to the bottom. It doesn't curve around the bottom of this tank or these other rods in here as you would expect if this had actually been part of the photo. So what I've done to fix that is I've added a levels adjustment layer. So I'm going to come down to my adjustment layer, do levels, and then I've just darkened the whole thing down. And that makes this whole appearance, this whole overlay appearance go away until now it looks more organic. This looks like it could be really convincing. And so here's the before, and here's the after. So that's about all it took to create this appearance of a weathered locomotive. Just this texture that was applied with a certain blend mode and this levels adjustment to tone it down. There is just one other thing I needed to do, which I won't illustrate how I did it here, but that's to apply a layer mask to this layer so that the effect wouldn't be applied to the sky. If I go back to the original version of the image, you can see that the sky is showing through here clearly without any of the texture on it. And I did that simply by blacking out that portion of the layer mask. Here we are, I'm looking at just the layer mask, and you can see the black portions are where the sky is showing through. So if I turn this off, and if I turn off the layer mask, you can see in this case the sky is showing through. Actually, in this particular case, it looks like clouds. It could be realistic, but it isn't really what I wanted, and it looks better just like that. So that's the process of creating this weathered locomotive engine using a texture.